Have you ever been on a flight, you're getting ready to land, and it feels like the plane is just circling? Well, you're not just going in random loops. You are probably flying in what's called a holding pattern, and it's one of the most precise and honestly crucial maneuvers in aviation. It looks super complex from the outside, but we're about to break it all down.
You know, for every pilot learning to fly by instruments, this is the feeling they're chasing. It's that aha moment, that light bulb turning on, when a bunch of confusing lines and numbers on a map suddenly click into place. And that's exactly where we're headed in this explainer.
So, what is it really? I mean, at its core, it's a way for pilots to wait in the air in a very controlled way. But how do you take a little symbol on a paper chart and translate that into a perfect maneuver thousands of feet above the ground, especially when you might not even be able to see out the window? Okay, to really get our heads around this, we need a simple picture to hold in our minds. And honestly, the best way to think about a holding pattern is as a perfect, invisible racetrack just floating in the sky.
Right, here's the official textbook definition. A couple of keywords in there. Predetermined. That means the route is already laid out with incredible precision. And specified airspace. This isn't just random circling, it's a highly structured procedure that keeps everyone safe and organized up there.
So let's stick with that racetrack idea. It's got two straightaways and two half-circle turns, and pilots have to fly it at a very specific altitude and speed. It is literally the sky's version of a waiting room, just making sure every single plane has its own protected piece of sky to hang out in. All right, let's switch seats and see this from the pilot's point of view. How does this racetrack actually show up on an aviation chart? Well, it's a combination of numbers, lines, and symbols that are basically a very specific set of instructions. So we're going to use a real-world example here from a chart for an airport near Denver. The center of our whole racetrack is a navigation beacon on the ground called the DRK VORTAC. You can just think of it as a special radio beacon that the airplane's instruments can lock onto. This beacon is our holding fix. It's the main reference point for the entire maneuver. And this table, this is the recipe for our racetrack. It tells the pilot everything they need to know. First, they have to fly toward that DRK beacon on a magnetic course of 0 to 8 degrees. That sets the direction of the whole pattern. Then, each straight part of the racetrack has to be flown for exactly 1 minute. And finally, the whole thing has to be flown at a strict altitude of 7,900 feet. These 4 little details are like the DNA of the hold. They define its exact size, shape, and position in the sky. Okay, so we've got the recipe, but how does a pilot actually go about flying this thing? Let's walk through the 4 legs of this invisible racetrack. It's just a constant repeating loop. So after the plane flies directly over the DRK beacon, the pilot starts a 180-degree turn to the right, and it's a standard rate turn, which means it takes exactly 2 minutes to do a full 360-degree circle. That timing is key. Then they fly straight away from the beacon for exactly 1 minute. Once that minute is up, they make another 180-degree right turn to line themselves back up with that 0 to 8-degree course, and they fly straight back to the beacon to start the whole thing all over again. You know, I love this quote from a flight instructor because it just captures the mindset perfectly. Flying a hold isn't passive at all. It's a really active, high-precision task. The pilot is constantly managing their altitude, the plane's attitude in the sky, and their navigational accuracy to fly that pattern perfectly, all while fighting things like the wind pushing them off course. Now, I know this can still feel a little bit abstract, so how do flight instructors take this complicated geometry and make it feel intuitive? Well, this is where that light bulb moment we talked about really happens. The secret isn't some fancy flight computer or complex tool. It's actually just simple, super clever little notes that instructors literally draw right on the chart. These aren't official symbols you'll find in a manual, but they are incredibly powerful learning aids that just make the whole picture click. And here it is. This is the trick. An instructor might draw a big P on one side of the pattern. That P stands for the protected side, the safe zone where there are no obstacles. Then they might put a D on the other side to remind the student of the direction of the turns, which are always to the right, unless it says otherwise. And a little T at the end of the outbound leg marks the turn point. Just like that, this abstract shape now has clear, simple landmarks. It's brilliant. So we know what a hold is, and we know how pilots fly one. But why does this one skill matter so much in the grand scheme of things? Why is it so critical? Well, holding patterns are really the backbone of managing air traffic. They're like a pause button for air traffic control. They allow controllers to safely space out aircraft when it gets busy or when there's bad weather. They're also a huge part of a missed approach. That's when a pilot can't land for some reason. They follow a procedure that almost always ends in a hold, giving them a safe space to circle, troubleshoot, and figure out the next steps. They're just a fundamental tool for keeping the skies safe and orderly. So, the next time you're on a flight and you feel that gentle, continuous turn as you approach your destination, you'll know exactly what's going on. You're not lost, you're flying on a perfectly drawn racetrack in the sky. It's really a testament to the incredible precision and hidden geometry that keeps us all safe up there. And it kind of makes you wonder, what other invisible highways are we flying on without even knowing it?